I would be pleased if you would join me on my journey to take control of my health, hopefully get myself to a place where my numbers are much more manageable, and that I will be around for my children and my grandchildren. So, I took my first dose of Mounjaro on Tuesday, January 6th at 3 p.m. Even the thought of food or drinking made me feel nauseated. By the following day, though, the nausea was still there, but much more manageable. I was able to eat small amounts with the help of some over-the-counter ginger gravel. That really helped. One thing I wasn't expecting was this strange body soreness, almost like I'd lifted weights or overworked my muscles. That lasted for a couple of days. I also experienced bloating. It was mostly controllable, except for one night. The worst day for me, which was actually the night before my next injection was due. I was so bloated. It was so painful. By the time I was due for my next shot, though, most of the side effects had subsided, aside from some low-grade bloating. I know that many of you are waiting for, the stats and stuff like that, so I'll just give them to you now, and this will be a fairly quick video. Since I'm pre-diabetic, I decided to buy a glucose meter so I could track my numbers before my next lab work in a couple of months. The morning after my first injection, my fasting glucose dropped from 5.9, which is pre-diabetic state, to 4.9, back into the normal range. That was honestly encouraging for me for just one day. I've also noticed some improvement in my soreness, in my inflammation. I have a lot of things going on. I'm being monitored for an autoimmune disease. So I have noticed some improvement on, nothing, it doesn't feel quite as inflamed as of the first week. I won't know if there's any improvement on my cholesterol numbers for a couple of months unless I can find a drugstore around here who does cholesterol testing, but I live in a pretty small town. I've already asked the pharmacist who does, who I get my Mounjaro from, and they don't do it there. So there are 2 other pharmacies in the area, and I may go ahead and ask them. I really want to keep track of this. And as far as my kidney numbers, I have a standing order, which is coming up in February. So I'll know if there's been any improvement on those numbers. I was down to anyone who has any kidney issues out there, the GFR number. My numbers was at 57. It's not horrendous. It's far from dialysis by any means, but I don't want it to go any lower than that. I want to stop it in its tracks, so to speak. I want to stop the progression. And hopefully, maybe by some miracle, have it increase my numbers so that they are at a better level. So as for my weight, I had already lost 10 pounds before I started this journey, and that was mainly because, like I said, I say that in October I found out I had kidney disease, but actually the pharmacist went over my numbers when my rheumatologist was giving me a medication, and because I am allergic to probably half a dozen different medications, standard medications, I was concerned that I would be allergic to that one that she had prescribed, which I believe is a hydroxychloroquine. Unfortunately, after 3 weeks, I wound up having to come off of it because my body rejected it. And that was also another reason going down this alley to see if there was another alternative. I didn't want to be on steroids to battle any outbreaks, or not outbreaks, what's the word I'm looking for? It'll come to me later. It usually does. So anyways, I'll have those numbers hopefully in February. Until then, I just, we'll keep plugging away. Now, as I said, as for the weight, I'd already lost 10 pounds before starting Mounjaro. My weight prior to starting Mounjaro, the day before, was at 160.4 pounds. 1 week later, I was at 159.3 pounds for a total weight loss of 0.9 pounds. I wasn't overly excited over that number, but I mean, it is what it is. And my reason for going on this medication, although the weight loss certainly will help in my endeavor to get healthy, it wasn't the reason why I went on it. So anyways, so that's pretty much the stat on that. But other than that, I would really appreciate you guys commenting and liking this video, and if you find it in your heart to subscribe, that would be wonderful. I'd love to hear your comments on your journeys, and any tips maybe that you might have for me as I begin this whole health regimen. Until next time, I'll see you probably next week, once I have completed my second week.